we just need to know that exercise, even though it is a good thing, if we're looking at our bodies as a whole, as like a system that energy needs to go in and then energy come out at somewhat of a matched pace to
Hmm.
still be able to stay whole, then we need to be realizing that even though exercise is a good, it is energy out. And so if energy is not coming in to support that, it is just giving this body another signal that there's not enough and things are not safe. And so to some extent, you can be in a calorie deficit and exercise and lose weight, but it is going to be at a cost to the body. And sometimes it just doesn't work when you really are so depleted that your body can't let go of that fat.
Welcome to the show, Keisha. So excited to talk about women's health today.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here.
We want to touch upon a lot of important topics that women are trying to find answers to online. So let's talk about cortisol. There is this common complaint about adrenal fatigue versus chronic stress. And we understand what this is, but we don't understand the mechanism behind it. Why does chronic high cortisol lead to that stress belly that women get? And the advice we get in this situation is go exercise more, but I feel like that sometimes backfires.
Mhm.
What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, so cortisol is a hormone that your body makes. So the hypothalamus and pituitary gland in the back of your brain are always searching for signals. It's always looking for signals. Are things safe? Is there enough food? Are there enough resources? Essentially, like, is it okay to tell the body to function in an optimal way, or are we in survival mode? And so your brain is always searching for those signals, and it's getting those signals from your environment. It's getting those signals from your emotional stressors. It's getting those signals from the food you're putting in your body, the chemicals that are around your body or in your body. And so there's all these different ways that your body is scanning for safety. And it will respond through the HPA axis, so the hypothalamus and pituitary in your brain, to your adrenal glands. It will respond by telling your adrenal glands to make a certain amount of cortisol. And so when you have a high amount of stress, your body is typically going to produce more cortisol. And if you have a high amount of stress over a long period of time, for various different reasons, your brain doesn't know the difference between a true famine survival mode and you diet, like hardcore dieting, or
Mhm.
going through divorce, or your children being sick, or just the typical stress of trying to keep household together and finances and those type of things. They all show up in your brain essentially the same way. So over time, our lives have become very stressful. And in the past, there were stressors that kind of like spiked and came and went, and that's what our bodies were designed for. And the world that we live in now is really created in a way that causes a lot of stress over time. And so your brain is actually being given signals, especially if you're not intentional about giving it signals of safety. There's a lot of signals of danger that your brain can be reading. And so it will be making more cortisol. But over time, because our bodies were not made to live in survival mode for years and years, over time, your brain will eventually and your adrenals will eventually say, something's not right here. Like, we can't still be running from this same tiger for 4 straight years. Like, something isn't quite right here. And we don't really have the resources to keep putting out this much cortisol over time. And so that's where we get to the point of what people will call adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction. There's all the kinds of different fancy names for it out there, but where you might still be very stressed, but your cortisol isn't keeping up anymore because your body is saying, this doesn't seem right. I really can't focus all of this energy on making cortisol over time. And so to go back to your question of like, why does high cortisol or cortisol dysfunction cause that belly fat? Well,
Mhm.
when your body is getting the signal that things are not safe, it is going to prioritize survival, which is going to be keeping your heart beating, keeping your blood sugar high enough for your brain to function. It's going to be giving you energy to your muscles so you can run away if you need to. It's going to be not focused on reproduction, so making your hormones well. It's not going to be focused on digestion. It's not going to be focused on detoxification. It's not going to be focused on making your hair and your skin look pretty because those things are all just nice to have and not absolutely necessary for survival. But what is necessary for survival is enough energy. And so if you're getting that signal again and again, there's really not enough here through chronic undereating or undernourishing, even if it's on accident, your body is going to hold on to everything it can. And so that's where weight gain and especially that belly fat gain can start to come in, is your body really just reading these signals of danger and saying, I'm going to hold on to everything I can to survive. And then when we meet that with okay, now I'm stressed out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exercise more. Even though that can be stress relief, it actually is also a stressor on the body. So when it's not matched with appropriate nutrition and sleep and recovery, then you can just kind of like push yourself further into that pattern.
Got it. But it doesn't mean that exercises will not make a difference. It's just that the other factors in the body that have been affected because of this are kind of contributing to your energy levels, right?
Right, absolutely. So when we look at exercise, we just need to know that exercise, even though it is a good thing, if we're looking at our bodies as a whole, as like a system that energy needs to go in and then energy come out at somewhat of a matched pace to
Mm-hmm.
still be able to stay whole, then we need to be realizing that even though exercise is a good, it is energy out. And so if energy is not coming in to support that, it is just giving this body another signal that there's not enough and things are not safe. And so you to some extent, you can be in a calorie deficit and exercise and lose weight, but it is going to be at a cost to the body. And sometimes it just doesn't work when you really are so depleted that your body can't let go of that fat.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about, so there's been so much talk about HRT recently, the hormone replacement therapy. There was a time when this was considered absolutely unsafe. And now, with the new FDA regulation, a lot of women are trying to get this. What is your opinion on how safe this is? And is it actually going to make a difference in a perimenopausal or menopausal woman's body?
So I think that there's definitely a difference for sure in women who are still cycling, having a regular cycle, especially pre that like perimenopause phase. And I'm always a big believer when I work with my clients that if your body is not making enough estrogen or making enough progesterone or making enough testosterone, there is a reason your body is not making enough. And it comes back to that safety. So we have to look at, are you getting the right foods at the right times to keep your blood sugar balanced? Are you sleeping enough? Are you like, is that energy coming in? And there's all these different factors that I look at, including functional lab testing for underlying inflammatory triggers like the gut and low minerals and things like that.
Mhm.
So there's a lot that we look at to see what's happening in the body that your brain is telling your ovaries not to make
Mhm.
those hormones. So
Mhm.
for me, I always want to know why. Now, when we start to move into perimenopause for me is a little bit tricky because a lot of women are being told they're in perimenopause, I think a little bit too early
Yeah.
when they can be like their hormones could be regulated on their own if they understood how to create safety in their body. So I think that even in perimenopause, there's a lot that we can do without HRT to help your body make your own hormones better. Now, when you are in menopause, you are going to be making a very low amount of hormones in general, and sometimes that can cause symptoms. And that is where I would say HRT is probably the most warranted because your body does not actually make these hormones in a very high amount anymore. But in that case, it does still go back to stress in the adrenals because the adrenals are what are making the hormones at that point. So, as far as the safety of HRT, there definitely are mixed reviews on the safety. I think my opinion is when we can avoid it, it's a good thing to avoid because synthetic hormones in your body are never going to do the same thing as the hormones your body can make. And so, to whatever extent it's possible in your life, especially in like pre like regular cycling
Mhm.
hormones, perimenopause. I think there's a lot that we can do to help our body make those hormones versus add hormones to the body. And then in menopause, that's where I think there is definitely some nuance to it, but there also is evidence that even like estrogen HRT can still feed estrogen-based cancers. And so I think there's always some caution that I would take, and I would want to look at the whole picture and so I don't think that it's across the board safe, honestly, regardless of what the FDA says,
Mhm.
because the FDA is just approving the pharmaceutical companies to be able to sell these medications. And no matter how many studies we have, there's just going to be varying degrees of safety, and our bodies are always changing based on our environment and our stressors and things like that too.
Let's go back a little bit. Hormone replacement therapy. What do you mean by that? I mean, what does it actually do in your body? What is it?
Okay, so hormone replacement therapy would be either taking a pill or a shot of hormones to
Mhm.
replace what your body isn't making. It's exactly what it sounds like. Now, it is going to be in synthetic form because that's what we have when our bodies
Mhm.
are not making it itself. And so it is different. So, for example, when you're taking, even if usually kind of the entryway is progesterone. If your body stops making enough progesterone, it's not making it enough to last through your cycle. If you were to start taking progesterone, you are taking a form of progesterone called progestin. And
Mhm.
while it may raise your progesterone levels and lengthen out your cycle a little bit, it is not going to have the same effects on your body that are positive, like positive cardiovascular effects, thyroid effects, even mood effects, as making your own progesterone. And so the
Mhm.
hormone replacement therapy essentially is just replacing with a synthetic what your body typically would make to try to like make up for that loss.
All right. And we also
Typically, it
see.
is, sorry, just to be clear, typically it is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And it's not all three all the time. It's kind of like whatever your doctor, what based on your labs,
Okay.
what your doctor decides.
So whichever one of these three is lower, you kind of give the HRT for that.
Mhm.
Okay. What is the average age for perimenopause? Because I get such different answers for this and it's hard to know.
So, my personal opinion, this is really my opinion, is that like right around like mid 40s is an
Mhm.
appropriate age for perimenopause. Now, I see women being told they're in perimenopause as early as 35, 38, 36. So that's really, really early in my opinion. Now, that does not mean they have no perimenopause symptoms, but this is where I see so much room for being able to give your body the signals to still make those hormones, where you still have the ability to make them,
Mhm.
versus when you're truly in perimenopause. This is where your ovaries have really gotten to the point where they are not able to continue to make these hormones consistently like they used to, and you've kind of like run out of that capacity. So, but I would really call anything earlier than that to be more like premature ovarian failure. And so I really don't like the perimenopause at 38 and then menopause at 45. It's really a sign that your body is essentially running out of energy faster than it should be. And so that's where I think we have a lot of a chance to pour into it. But absolutely, I see it being called perimenopause a lot earlier.
Got it. A lot of women these days are following these new trends and they're moving from, like, say, calorie counting to understanding their metabolic health and being more intelligent about that. So they're kind of tracking their cycle and, say, lifting weights or doing HIIT workouts during a certain time of the cycle using glucose monitors. So, do you think that actually works? And what really goes on in the luteal and follicular phase? Does it make a difference if you plan your workouts like that?
Yeah, so really, I think what you're asking about is like a term called cycle syncing. And there is a lot of evidence behind it because your body is doing different things in different phases of your cycle. So at the beginning of your cycle, when your period starts, estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest levels, and they're meant to be at their lowest levels. And then about a week into your cycle, estrogen starts to rise, and it rises to a high point to trigger ovulation. And then once ovulation occurs, estrogen drops off and then progesterone rises. And it's meant to be able to sustain for about 2 weeks until the end of your cycle. And estrogen just has like one more little spike prior to the end of your cycle. So if your cycle is going well and your body has the safety that it needs to be able to make those hormones well, then you have really different hormone profiles throughout the month. So, if you are focusing on heavier workouts when estrogen rises in the middle of the month and actually testosterone is highest, and then towards the end of the month and like when you're on your period, you're doing more, kind of moderate workouts or lifting versus a lot of cardio, that can really be supportive for the body.
Mhm.
I think that it can get overcomplicated. And
Yeah.
I think that what I really like to do is pay attention to what the body is doing as a whole. I do think that you can definitely, I notice for myself, I work out consistently throughout my whole month, but I notice for myself that I feel better if I don't go as hard as possible when I'm just about to start my period. And I notice that maybe I can lift a little bit heavier when I am in the middle of my cycle because I do have more hormones. I have more estrogen and testosterone that would kind of drive that. And I think that having more of like a steady, consistent pace all month long really does a lot of good versus just overdoing it. And
Mm.
that's what I see. I see really both sides of the spectrum. I see someone who does like to work out, just like going way too hard all the time, or someone who doesn't like to work out, not doing anything all the time. And I think that like something in the middle is really, really good. And then there are those times where you can push a little bit harder and like work towards goals, but it has to come at the time where your body has the resources. And so that's what it comes back to over and over again for me is it bad to work out hard all cycle long? Often, yes, if you're depleted, but maybe not if you truly have the resources that you need. You're not overly stressed, you're sleeping, you're getting the right nutrients, right? And so it comes back to that a lot of times. But I do think that there is a lot of merit to cycle syncing. And I do think that it is really powerful for women to track their cycles and to understand what's happening. Because then when you do go to your doctor or a practitioner, you have context for what you're saying.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, I do have some mood swings, but it's like this certain part of my cycle versus just like sometimes I feel crazy and I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
Or like, I have breast tenderness, this is when it is. Or I have headaches, this is when it is. I notice I'm hungrier at this phase or I'm tired. Or so it really is helpful to be able to see that, especially for a practitioner who is well versed in knowing what hormones are doing throughout the cycle, because then we can see, what's happening and kind of get to the bottom of it faster. And you
yeah.
mentioned glucose monitors as well. I think that glucose monitors can be really helpful if you think that you have some insulin resistance, if you think that your blood sugar is struggling. A continuous glucose monitor can be great as I think a short-term tool. I don't think it's typically something that people need long-term, but to be able to see, is this breakfast that I'm eating every day doing good things for my blood sugar or not? Like it's giving me a huge spike and a drop every morning, right when I feel tired and I feel like I have to have coffee. That's good information to have as long as you're willing to do something different and change
About
that.
it. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I also feel like walking is such an underrated exercise that you can do throughout the month instead of, especially when your energy levels are fluctuating so much, which
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't talk about. All
Yeah.
right, moving on to the metabolic hormone connection, like the PCOS and insulin connection. There are so people who have PCOS, they are constantly struggling with weight gain. And they say that even if we eat the perfect macros, we don't see the scale move. Can GLP-1s, and I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this, but do GLP-1s actually help in reducing weight, especially for women who have PCOS, or they just kind of mask it and make you lose weight temporarily?
So I haven't spent a ton of time doing research on GLP-1s. I think that we still don't have the big picture on them since they really have come on the scene pretty recently. And the biggest concern that I have about them, especially in a picture of PCOS, and PCOS is going to be polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's definitely a syndrome. People have different symptoms. Not everyone has actually cysts on their ovaries, but there can be insulin resistance. There can be higher androgens like testosterone, DHEA, and there can be estrogen dominance issues, but it's one of the main symptoms is these like irregular cycles and maybe not ovulating every cycle or having these really long cycles like 60 days, 80 days, only a couple cycles a year. Those are symptoms of PCOS. And it really, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it really does come back to why does your body not have the resources it needs to be able to make hormones well? Because your brain is not sending the signal to your ovaries regularly that it is safe to ovulate. And it's not creating those estrogen spikes to cause you to ovulate regularly because there's underlying deficiency typically or inflammation or stress. And so when we look at GLP-1s, like yes, GLP-1s I think almost across the board can make you lose weight.
But they're
And
also known to balance hormones for the people who have PCOS. Is that correct?
I don't know enough about the mechanism to tell
Okay.
you how it could or couldn't balance hormones, to be
Okay.
honest. But if it decreases weight and supports insulin sensitivity, then on paper, that can be a really good thing. But we're also seeing the side effects of loss of muscle mass. And muscle mass is hard to get back sometimes after
Mm.
you've lost it. And muscle mass is also something that decreases insulin resistance, increases insulin sensitivity, and helps with weight loss. And so, my biggest concern is that GLP-1s are being marketed as this kind of like magic tool to decrease weight and can kind of like fix all your problems, but there are going to be long-term side effects that are not being marketed because why would you market those? And I think they just really need to be used very intentionally versus just like, oh, this is the magic cure for everything.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of land on that.
So you mentioned that PCOS is sometimes stress related. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
It can be. It can be. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the term premature Adriachi.
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's something that happens with little girls around. It could happen as early as 6 or 7, 8 years old, where they are not hitting early puberty yet, but it's somewhere between early puberty and normal growth. Okay, so little girls start developing some of the symptoms of early puberty. And doctors usually say that this will eventually lead to PCOS if weight is not controlled. What I wonder here is, and I understand that this is not your specialty, but the child may not be stressed, but is still their hormones are a little all over the place, which is causing this, which makes me wonder, like, is hormonal imbalance actually stress related, or is it something else going on in the body?
Yeah, okay. So I do have some context on what
Yeah.
you're saying. So when we look at children who are
Hmm.
having early puberty symptoms, even if it's not technically diagnosed as early puberty,
Yeah.
it's kind of like generally the
Yeah.
same thing. We may not see them with emotional stressors, but there can be other stressors that are causing their hormones to essentially kick up a little bit early. And some of those things can be toxins in the environment, especially endocrine disrupting products that they are getting. So a lot, especially little girls, like they can be using a lot of products that have fragrances in them, and things like that. And that actually those essentially act in the body as synthetic hormones. And so that can trigger hormones
Wow.
to be created earlier than they should be. It also can be really low nutrition foods. Kid food is so low nutrition for those children who are really eating like mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and fast food and just like kid snacks. There's basically no nutrition in that. And so I heard this explained really well recently, and it's essentially that, you know, your your child's brain is scanning for safety, and at a very primal level, our bodies are designed to survive and reproduce. And so if it's like we really don't even have what we need for survival as a child, there's a lot of stress in my body, even if, on the surface, like they're a happy kid and they're, live a
Hmm.
safe life, but there's these toxins and like low nutrition that's causing stress in their body can ramp up puberty early as essentially a survival mechanism of like, well, if I might not survive as long as I should reproduce before, something happens to
Wow.
me almost, which is wild to think about for our children. But so I still do believe that the
Is
hormone
this
issues are
reversible?
typically stress related, but it might not be emotional stress. It might be toxin stress or sleep stress or blue light stress. Like there's so many other things that can be stress factors.
Do you think this is reversible?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, like hormone, like just trying to balance it out at a younger age and see if we can, because, okay, okay, all right, thank you for that. I want to talk about the female testosterone. It's considered a male hormone, but women, when they lose muscle mass, when they have low libido, it is because of low testosterone, right? Correct
It
me if
can
I'm
be.
wrong.
Mhm.
Can
Mhm.
be. Now, what happens to a woman's brain and body when that testosterone level completely hits the ground in their 40s?
So this does
And is
depend on
there,
age. Yeah.
okay, I'm saying, is
Yeah.
there a way to, like, apart from HRT, are there any natural ways to, keep up the level?
So there are some specific nutrients that are needed to make testosterone. One of them is zinc. And when we look at minerals like zinc, they work in balance with other minerals. So it really is important to be able to support multiple different nutrients and not just zinc, but sometimes there are different herbs that can help support testosterone production. There are different nutrients that can help support testosterone production. So being able to get a blood panel could be a place to start to see,
Mhm.
if you're low in those nutrients that help support testosterone. That's a huge factor. And then also, just looking at like your other hormone production, do you have enough DHEA? That's an adrenal hormone because DHEA is a precursor to testosterone. If DHEA is low, that's again because your adrenals are overstressed. And so even if you have enough zinc, if you don't have enough DHEA to make testosterone from, you're not going to be making enough testosterone. So there's definitely some factors to look at. It's not just that, oh, I'm over 40, I can't make it anymore. There's nothing to do about it.
And there's also an entire industry that's selling us these supplements. And the latest one I hear is
Mhm.
creatine, to kind of build muscle mass or fix our hormones. At what point, I would say that this whole bio tracking, like obsessing over our health, actually become like counterproductive. If you're not stressing about daily life, you're kind of now stressing about intake of micros, what's my hormone health like? What is the right balance here?
This is definitely a topic that I love because I do see that. I think that as humans, we're just kind of built where we like swing one way and then we swing the other way and we're just kind of like go too far with things. And so definitely like your health can become a stressor if you are over obsessing about it. And I think that truly we have to go back, and this is what I preach on my podcast all the time because it's just so true and I see it work so much of the time is like we have to look at the foundations. Like, are you eating enough food? Are you eating good foods? Are you getting good nutrients? But that doesn't have to be something to obsess about. It's just like something that like once you kind of create a baseline, like you can stay there and just stay consistent, right? It can be simple. Women typically do not get enough sleep. Like they don't get enough sleep. And we just brush it off. We're like, I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, I work. So like 6 hours
Yeah,
of sleep is fine. It's
yeah,
not fine. Like it's just truly not fine. But we have gotten to the point where we are just believing that like our sleep is not the issue, our like caffeine addiction or caffeine cravings, that's not the issue. It's that I need creatine. And it's like, it's not. Now, creatine can be a great supplement, but I really think that so much of the time as Americans, like we're just so like in our culture, like we like to buy things. We like the fast fix. We like the easy thing. And so if we get a social media ad that says creatine will fix your brain fog and your belly fat and help you build muscle, but what's really causing each of those things is that you're not getting enough sleep and you're skipping breakfast every day and you're drinking coffee for breakfast, the creatine might help a little, but like you need to fix the actual problem. So it's almost like if you're like a cup and there's a big hole in the cup and you just keep being like, why can't I get enough water in my cup? But you don't look at the hole, then like you're gonna stay stuck. And so I think supplements can be helpful. I think that exercising is a great thing. I think that sometimes we do need to count macros just to be honest with ourselves of what we're getting, right? But I don't think that the obsession and the like, I have to wear my Aura ring every day and look at my sleep score. I have to have a
correct.
glucose monitor. I like Aura rings. I think they can be good. I actually don't have one because I think I might get a little obsessive about it. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't think I need to know everything all the time.
It actually doesn't provide as much information as I thought it would. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there are seasons, right? There are busy seasons in life. There's postpartum, there's divorce, there's all these seasons where we have stress and sometimes we need some outside support, whether that's hopefully people, right? But some of these devices can be really helpful too. And sometimes you do need to check in with your glucose for a couple weeks and see what's happening. Sometimes you need to pay attention to your macros for a little bit. You do need probably there are some supplements that need to happen, but I like more foundational supplements that are just like replenishing nutrients that we are not getting in our food because our food is kind of depleted versus these kind of like quick fix little ones that I have a supplement cabinet full of things, but most of the time I don't see the results I want from them. And a lot of times there's something that I'm ignoring underlying, like I really just need to go to bed earlier. And that's something that I
Yeah.
struggle with as a
Yeah.
mom because, like when the kids are finally in bed, it's so nice. And I
To
don't want to go to
just, yeah, to
bed.
just relax or just scroll on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I,
even if I'm not on my phone, even if I'm doing things that are like good for me, sometimes I'm still not getting enough sleep. And so I think really the honesty with yourself of like, is what I'm doing actually supporting my health or is it giving me more to stress about? I think that's a really honest question that you probably know the answer to. Maybe I need to finish out the supplements you have and then just take a break for a little while and see if you even notice a difference. And those are the kind of things I think that's where it really helps to have someone look into your personal story with you and like get the big picture view because we're all kind of blind to our own things. And so it's really nice to have someone look and say, this is where there's stress in your body. These are hidden stressors you didn't even know. This is how we can fix it in a very like systematic, realistic, consistent way. And we may add a couple fun, fancy things on top, but like the foundations have to be there first.
to end things, there's one question that always pops up in my head, and you briefly talked about it, is we're essentially living in an environment that is hormonally hostile. Let's put it like that. There's your blue light before night, then there's the endocrine disruptors. We're living in an environment that is working against us, and then we're also expecting to fix our health by having supplements or exercising. Are we just trying to fight a battle, like a lost battle here? Because the environment itself is so defected, I would say.
I think I don't like to look at it that way because
Yeah.
I like to have hope. And so yes, there are things in our environment working against us. And I think if you listen to the people who want to tell you everything that could possibly be wrong in our environment, like yeah, there's a lot of things that aren't good for our bodies. But you know what we still have? We still have real food available to us for the most part, right? That we can find even at the typical grocery store, like meat and vegetables. Is it the same quality it was 100 years ago? Maybe not, but like we still have that. We still have people around us that we can enjoy connecting with. We can slow down. We can go outside in the sunshine. We can do things that we enjoy for fun and just like reconnecting with nature where we're not just inside all day long, on screens all day long. Like those things will depress you, they'll deplete you. But going back to like what you love, like thinking of who you were as a little girl and like what lit you up, like what did you love? I loved swimming when I was little. Like
I
my
love
mom took us
swimming.
to the pool all the time. The whole summer we were at the pool or the beach. We lived in a really hot place. And so
Yeah.
we were always swimming. And so like coming back to that and being like, I actually love to swim, but we have just like a super not fancy pool in our backyard, an above ground pool. And like my kids have so much fun in there, but I forget sometimes. Like I'm out there to have fun with them, but I'm like cleaning the pool, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no, I need to just put
Yes.
on some goggles and go swim underwater and be silly with them, right? It's those
Yeah.
kind of things that we forget because we're just so weighed down by responsibility. But like, are we really helping ourselves by doing that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that remembering to find joy makes a huge difference. I think speaking life over ourselves makes a huge difference. And I think that like we can rewire our beliefs. And I think that there's so much resilience we can build in our bodies, and that's really what it comes down to at this point. Like, yes, there's always things that are going to be against us, but like we can continue to just build resilience in our bodies so that we can detox well, so that we can be able to replenish as our nutrients are being depleted. We are
Yeah.
able to find peace even though we also have stress. Like, I think that that's where we have to go to counteract. And I think that's what we don't do. We have this constant, just like overflow
Seeing
of
the glass
information.
half full. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think being more positive is such an important part of your overall health.
And I think sometimes turning off the flow of information, when you have everything coming in that's telling you everything is bad for you, you're going to believe it. And when you believe that everything is bad for you, your body will react in that way. So they're very much are real things that are bad for you. I'm not
Yeah.
discounting that, but I think when we're afraid of everything, it makes us sicker.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lisha. This was such a fantastic podcast. I learned so much about women's health today. So thank you for your time once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share. I will be putting down Lisha's details in the description section below, along with all her information on hormone and health. And until then, this is Rishanka Jones signing off.